With the NBA trade deadline fast approaching, teams across the league will be quickly assessing their season at large and determining whether they should be buyers or sellers at the deadline. This normally marks the final point for a team to phone it in for the season, sell off their assets, improve their draft stock, and try again next year. One team that should be following suit is the Toronto Raptors, who after an impressive season last year, brought back the same core, hoping to not only replicate but improve on last year's performance. But yeah, that didn't happen. The Raptors are currently 11th in the East with a 21-27 record. It's tough to point out one exact thing that hampered our season. It's kind of a combination of a lot of factors, such as injuries, player regressions, poor roster construction, bench depth, bad coaching, embarrassing half-court offense, lack of defensive identity, no center, long scoring droughts. You get the idea. We're in this position now, and all we can do is make the most of it. So how exactly do we do that? Well, it won't be easy, but it all starts with trading Fred VanVleet. But before we get into the video, guys, as always, please remember to give this video a like, share with anybody you want to, and subscribe to the channel. I'll greatly appreciate any support you're willing to give. And as always, if you're interested in anything I do outside of YouTube, give me a follow on Instagram and TikTok at SportsWithCasually. Both links to my social medias would be in a link tree in the description below. Let me start off by saying I still love Fred. He's still one of my favorite players and still one of the best two-way guards that we have in the league. He's been done dirty by our front office and their inability to assess and sign any backup guards to ease his workload. And he's been overworked by the coaching staff due to the Raptors' importance on winning. So he's having a bad year, and because of that, fans have shit on him. And I mean, that's fair. I've done it. But I see a lot of fans over-hating him, which is a little too extreme and a little weird. But that's because he's become the scapegoat for this team's many problems. Unfairly so, as I do believe the front office deserves the biggest piece of the blame pie for what happened this season. But hey, that's a different story for a different video. But as much as I love him, my desire for this team to go down the rebuilding path is much greater. And he's standing in the way of that. How, you may ask? Well, for that, we need to focus on the coming off season, where both Fred and Gary Trent Jr. have player options which they will probably decline to get bigger deals. These guys are both a part of our core. They're our only three-point shooters. And not to mention, they're two of the only 7 players that Nick gives minutes to on the team. So I would say they're both pretty important. Now, you could easily just say that we'll just re-sign them and bring them back. And while it is true that we might be able to do that given our cap situation next year, if we look further than that, that's when things become a huge biggie. You see, in the 2024-25 offseason, OG has a player option that he'll probably decline. Siakam will be an unrestricted free agent with the potential to sign a supermax, which he will probably meet the criteria for. And not to mention Scottie Barnes' impending rookie extension. And as you can see, this team's payroll and cap situation is about to get really big really soon. It's reported that Gary Trent Jr. would be looking for a deal between 20 to 25 million per year, and Rockford's finest would be looking for a Kyle Lowry type deal, which will have him making between 30 to 35 million per year. And while both these players would have earned and deserved whatever raise they get in the offseason, that doesn't particularly mean that I want my team giving it to them.
Hey, yo!
If we being real, my heart says to resign Fred. He's a homegrown guy, he's an all-star, he's a champion, and I have personally gotten attached to this core. And the front office feels the same way, as it has been reported that they won't be listening to offers for Fred and only listening to offers for Gary Trent Jr. However, I think that's wrong. The person to trade at the deadline is Fred, not Gary. Not only is Gary the younger and the cheaper option, I do believe going forward that his skill set would be much more suited for this team than Fred's own. But the reason I want to move Fred and not Gary, besides the salary situation, is because I think Fred is the better asset. Which is strange to think of considering Fred is in a down year and Gary Trent Jr. gives you that microwave scoring coming off the bench. But Fred is an all-round better player than Gary is right now. If you get Fred, you get a playmaker, a secondary ball handler, more spacing, a culture setter, and a leader. He's a former All-Star and he's won a championship. Not to mention, he's still one of the better defenders at his position. I firmly believe that a smaller role for Fred would be more beneficial for him. And no, I'm not saying that he should come off the bench or only play 15 to 20 minutes a night. That's not what I'm saying, no. But we have seen with his massive ungodly workload that Fred's body has begun to break down. And while some players are able to play the 36 plus minutes a night on a consistent basis, Fred's body just can't keep up. So if a team with adequate talent around him and good depth so he could get his rest is out there and is looking for that extra punch, then by all means. It will be a win for us and more importantly a win for Fred because boy, that man certainly needs his rest. So even though it was reported that the Raptors won't be looking to move Fred, this is my video, so let's talk about some realistic trade packages and the value for one Fred VanVleet. Now he's in a down shooting year overall, although the last month and a half have been a lot better. But besides that, he still contributes to this team way more than just his shooting. But at the same time, Jay-Z said it best, numbers don't lie. If VanVleet's trade value were to go down, as it should, then a trade package for him would look something like one or two either solid bench or young guys, salary filler if need be, and maybe a protected first. We should be focusing on either A, getting young players that would be on the same development timeline as Scottie and Achiuwa, or B, getting quality role players that can help fill out this roster since the front office is incapable of doing so. So now that we know the type of packages I'll be focusing on, let's talk about the teams that Fred could fit on or teams that would link to him in trade rumors. Granted, I know that whoever trades for Fred would want to be very confident that they could re-sign him in the offseason, so it won't just be a rental. So we need to decide on the teams that make the most sense. So the teams who have been reportedly linked to Fred are the Lakers, the Clippers, the Mavs, the Pelicans, and the Magic. And I'm also going to be throwing in a mystery team at the end, just, my personal favorite trade package. I'm immediately going to eliminate the Suns and the Lakers from this equation because one, the Lakers don't have any assets that I'm interested in getting in return. And two, I think the Suns, if they were to make a trade with the Raptors, would be more focused on one of our front court guys or maybe Gary Trent Jr. So I don't think Fred would be the top of their priority if they want to make a trade with us. Now before we start, keep in mind I'm not really a trade guy. I just hopped onto Fanspo and went into the trade machine and threw shit at the wall until it stuck and until I can make sense of it. Now, let's get into the trade packages. Starting off with the one I dislike the most, and this one is with the Mavs. And in this trade, they get Fred and Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and we get Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Green, a 2025 protected first, and a 2027 second round pick. Obviously, we saw how good Luka was with another ball handler last season in Brunson, and they got all the way to the Western Conference Finals. Fred, while not being as young and with both guys having different skill sets, I think they could replicate that success with him on the team. Plus, Luka gets two more shooters, so there's that. For the Raptors, THJ is a streaky shooter at best, and his contract is pretty long, but at least it's front-loaded, so it would go down in years. And hey, it would be nice to have another guy on the court who could actually create for themselves. And Josh Green is also still young, and he was actually having a breakout season with the Mavs before getting hurt. He has decent size for a guard, he's athletic, but overall not the best return. Next we have the Magic, and in this trade they'll be getting Fred, and the Raptors will be getting Mo Bamba, Chuma Okeke, Cole Anthony, and a protected 2024 first round pick. For the Magic, they get a real leader and culture setter in Fred. This team has struck gold in the lottery, and I think they have 2 first round picks in this upcoming draft. But at the same time, you can't keep tanking forever. Now, you could just say that the logical thing for the Magic to do if they want Fred is to just sign him in the offseason. they have been reported as off-season pursuers of Fred. Reports came out recently. And while that makes sense, they also might need to get rid of some players. Their backcourt is super congested, and they really need to prioritize putting complementary pieces around Paolo, France, and Wendell. Plus, Fred can move to the 2 since Markelle Fultz is doing such a great job at the point guard position. For the Raptors, they get Bamba. He's a stretch 5 with still some potential. He stretches the floor, and he defends the rim and defends the paint as well. Cole Anthony is like a Gary Trent Jr. light. While, he might not have the same efficiency as Gary Trent Jr., what I do like is that he brings more playmaking to this team than Gary does. He's career averaging over 4, almost 5 assists per game. Oh, and Achiuwa is just salary filler. No offense. The next one will be from the Pelicans, and they get Fred and Malachi Flynn, and they will be sending back Devontae Graham, Jackson Hayes, Dyson Daniels, and a 2025 Milwaukee protected first-round pick. With all the injuries the Pelicans are facing, they're still probably looking to capitalize on their good standing right now and filling it out with rotation-ready players like Fred. He could start and play along with CJ, splitting ball handling duties, and he provides spacing for when Zion gets back. And I think his championship experience and pedigree will be a nice addition to this young team. Dyson Daniels is the real prize here. He fits right into our vision. 6'9", he can play, make, and defend. Graham, while being a shot chucker, still provides extra playmaking and shooting for this team that desperately needs it at this point. And Jackson is just salary filler for now. But it's unrealistic because I doubt the Pelicans will be willing to part with Daniels after just drafting him. He's very, very promising. And even by some miracle this trade were to go through, I doubt they would attach a first-round pick to it. This next trade seems the most realistic and the one that makes the most sense for us right now, and it's with the Clippers. In this trade, they get Fred and Cambridge, and the Clippers would send back John Wall, Lookin, Amir Coffey, and a protected 2028 first-round pick to Toronto. It's been reported that the Clippers will be willing to move off of Wall's contract to help shore up their backup big man spot. And with the poor play of Reggie Jackson lately, the Clippers would be looking to get a lead guard as well. Plus, Fred, Norman, and Kawhi have worked well together in the past. And although Cam gets no playing time, he's a solid backup and he sets good screens, so there's that. For the Raptors, Kennard is a great shooter and his team desperately needs 3-point shooting. Amir Coffey might not be that young, but he's 6'7" and has shown some promise and potential to be a bucket and a good passer actually. And Wall is a solid guard in replace of Fred VanVleet, and while he's past his prime, I still think that we'll get some pretty good production from him once he stays healthy. Now you're probably thinking why I didn't throw Terrence Mann in the trade, and I think he's too valuable to the Clippers, so I don't think they would want to trade him anyway. So out of all of these, I think the one with the Clippers is the most realistic. However, the one with the Pelicans does offer us the best return. However, I want to throw my own personal favorite trade package in there, although it won't make any sense. In this trade, the Washington Wizards get Fred VanVleet, and in return, the Raptors get Will Barton, Daniel Gafford, Corey Kispert, and a protected 2026 first-round pick. This trade solves two of our major issues. We get a starting center in Gafford, one of the most underrated players in the league. And we get Kispert, a forward who is a good shooter and will provide us some much-needed spacing. Now, I tried to come up with reasons on why the Wizards should do this, but I'm gonna be real, I can't think of any good ones. I mean, if they do, then they would have to re-sign Fred, Porzingis, Rui, and Kuzma in the offseason, with Beal taking up 35% of their cap space no less. That last trade is totally unrealistic, but ladies and germs, that would be my ideal trade package in return for Fred VanVleet. We address our big man and our 3-point shooting issues, and now all we have to do is get a decent guard either in free agency or in the draft. With the 2022-23 season not turning out as planned, it is now time to pivot in a new direction. As much as management loves to harp on winning, you can't exactly win all the time, especially with poor roster construction. Unfortunately, Fred has become the victim of this, and as much as I love him, he has got to go in order for this franchise to take one step back but two steps forward. And if it doesn't work, the next guy to be traded is OG Anunoby. But, we'll cross that bridge when we reach there. But let's be realistic, Fred will probably not be traded. Gary would. And we will either lose Fred in free agency for nothing, or we will overpay him in order to get hurt playing 37 plus minutes a night. So let's go into this trade deadline the same way we go into every offseason. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst, and with literally zero expectations. Because expectations, my friends, are the thieves of joy. Happy tanking, and I'll see y'all in the next video.